Welcome to LG Hockey Hotline. I'm V High. I'm back this week with my wonderful co-hosts Moran Akonda and Goose Chuck. Like the new music, Moran. Changing it up a little bit, huh?
Yeah, hey, we got to keep them on their toes, eh? You know, fun.
Oh, what's going on, guys? How was your week this week? It's been pretty busy as we're, heading towards the final week of the regular season here. Goose Chuck, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. We were just talking before the show went live. It's crazy how we're already in the final week of regular season here, season 3. It's exciting, but it's also, you know, uh, it's fun knowing that next week we got playoffs coming, or 2 weeks, whatever. Got playoffs coming, and that's really when LG is it's exciting, and that's the best time of an LG season.
Yeah, I expect the trash talking to start some point around, I don't know, what do you say, game time tomorrow night? But anyway, Moran, what's going on? I know this is our first season in management in the NHL, and the regular season's rapidly coming to a close here. But we got to wrap up Week 8 here, and we still have 10 games to play this week as a league. Um, well, what are you looking for out of the final week here? We got a couple of really tight races, and still not clear in the Western Conference anyway which teams are actually going to be in.
For sure. As far as coming up on the last week of the season, it's a bummer, man. It makes but hey, it is what it is. Another season in the books. Season 3 is about to close with one more week left here, and you're right. In the Western Conference, it's still wide open. There's several teams within an earshot of the final 2 wild card seeds. I think the top 3 in each division are almost in hand. But, this week, like we said, a few weeks back, is Week 9 is all about the interdivision play. You're playing guys that are in your division that are chasing you. You're playing teams that are in the other division in your conference that are chasing you as well. So, I mean, it's time to nut up here and, get after it. And, like we had talked last week, Goose Chuck, the Eastern Conference is not much has changed, right? From looking at it, I don't see anybody that's moved up and made a run. The Hurricanes had gained a little bit of ground, it looks like. I can't remember exactly how many they were out at the beginning or at the end of last week, but they're within 7 points of one of those wild card spots, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on over there in the Eastern Conference. But they don't play Tampa this week. I don't believe they may. Actually, let me take a peek at that, because that would be a very interesting game to see if they do play Tampa, and they may. This week's all interdivision play, so it's going to be a week to gain or lose ground for sure.
Yeah, each game is going to mean something more because it being division matchups. And, one thing to watch is Anaheim is sitting right now. They've clinched the division. They early last week, mathematically, they clinched wild card. Not that anybody thought they'd fall down that far. But then they clinched, by the end of the week, they've clinched their division. And right now, they are 7 points ahead of the Chicago Blackhawks in the President's Trophy race. And quite honestly, they could have that wrapped up by midweek, regardless of what Chicago does. Not to mention that Chicago has won 11 straight games. But Anaheim, I believe they need 6 wins. 5 or 6 wins, regardless of what any of the other teams do, and they've locked up the President's Trophy. So they're sitting in a very good spot. People will say there's a curse to winning the President's Trophy, but there's different ways of looking at it, honestly. But this Anaheim Ducks team, we played some games last night with a few of those guys, Carmstrong and several others from the Ducks, and to me, it seems like their mindset is right where it needs to be. They're having fun, enjoying playing hockey, not putting too much pressure on themselves. And all season, they've been able to go out and just get it done. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. They're they're basically sitting up there, took care of business most of the season, and now they're waiting to see who that 8th wild card spot's going to go to and who their matchup's going to end up being for sure.
I enjoyed playing games with them a bunch last night. You know, it was
Super
Carmstrong,
fun.
AHL All-Star, a coin, and there was another guy, KG. You know, that was fun. I had a blast. You know, they were all super cool guys, and we played extremely good hockey together. So it was a lot of fun. And you know, if their entire team has that mindset, they're going to be one tough SOB come playoff time because they're good top to bottom. Every single line is good. There's not a single person on their team that has double-digit losses this season. Every single player on their team is above the 0 mark, is plus minus. So I mean, you know, they're rolling on all cylinders here, and I think it's going to be a cakewalk for them to take the President's Trophy.
Let's be real clear on that stat real quick about no players having double-digit losses. Their team only has 13 losses and 4 overtime losses. Their team, for the full season through 8 weeks of 9, barely has double-digit losses themselves.
That's true. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy to think, and you know, I mean, we've seen it for a few weeks now that Anaheim is far and away the favorite. It's cool to see how Chicago has kept up with them. You know, they've won 11 straight, like you mentioned. The big thing I'm focusing on is that Western race, and you look down. You know, we talked about we talked to counterattack at the deadline, and then over the next couple of weeks we talked about the Avalanche, and we see them now. They won 5 straight. They got 75 points. They're not out of it yet. They're only 8 points out of that 8th seed, but you wonder if they got hot just a little too late, because that's a mountain to climb. Now, it benefits them that, again, like we mentioned, it's interdivision matchups. So you're going to be facing the guys you're competing with to get that playoff spot. So that may benefit. Yeah, that may benefit them. But regardless, that whole battle in that West Central division for that A seed, you see the Jets, the Wild, the Predators. And
even the Blues are within reach, honestly, for some of those teams. So
they are.
All 5 of those teams could shake up. I don't expect them to shake up a ton, but you really have no idea.
And that just makes it so much more fun. That, like I said a couple of weeks ago, this is really when you start buckling down and watching these games, because you know you're going to see so many good battles for those final playoff spots in the coming week.
For sure. Before we get too deep into this conversation, I want to move back to some house cleaning stuff. We do have a new owner in Detroit for the final week of the season, Lazy, a.k.a. Stoner, who I guess seems to be taking this step into management late in the season role fairly well. As he last year, the Toronto Marlies needed a GM, and he stepped in little past the halfway point to go in the season. I think maybe about the halfway point, 1 or 2 weeks before the trade deadline. And then again this season gets the nod for Detroit to finish it out. Tough situation there, but looks like he's filling out that roster with guys that he can, and we'll see what happens with them. And then one thing that I wanted to bring up, and Mike, you'll know a little more about this, is we're having trouble starting games on time, and it's really been since we had the code to input for drop-in matchmaking. It's really easy to find the game and get it going, and we're having a lot of late starts still, and a lot of reasons sometimes being guys that are playing in VG and other leagues being late to it, and we've been told that that's not a valid excuse. You know, it's not something that I want to harp on too much, but it's not something that the league has said is an approved reason to start late. So I just wanted to make that clear to the public that that's not something that the league wanted to approve and hasn't. So, you know, if somebody's calling someone on that, it's because the league has said so.
Yeah, starting on times, you know, I'm a big believer in, you know, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. You know, but obviously, you know, every game, you know, I need time. And stuff does come up. We had a couple of situations this week where some things came up. Guys disappeared, and we were scrambling for ECUs. And, you know, one of the games that we were scrambling for ECUs in, I ended up having to use a guy that was confirmed in the AHL. to play. And, I know that's against the rules, and we had a goddamn hour to get the game done. We started it, late, and then, of course, there's a freaking lag out during the game, and then it takes 20 minutes to get back into the game. And instead of just being ready and go, get back into the game, the lag out, it was just a goddamn mess. And of course, I go and I get a league warning for it because the player missed his AHL game, and that's on me. But kind of a shitty situation all the way around. But that's the stuff that's happening now, is that when we're not starting games on time or getting back in a quick manner to lagged out games, it's causing a trickle down effect, and other things are being affected by it. So I guess the only thing I would really preach on that is be aware of the time, be aware of the situation, be aware of how long it's taking to get things done, and try and be as punctual as possible with getting restarts started, within just a couple of minutes. Getting to your games on time, getting ECUs found, within a matter of 5-10 minutes max, and getting into games. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and I get the idea that I don't disagree with LG's ruling, how it's not a valid excuse, because to me, you can play as many leagues as you want. Obviously, it's a convenient thing to do. You don't have to go somewhere. You don't have to drive anywhere. You just do it from your house, and you play PlayStation. So you have LG, and you only get to play 3 games a week. You can't have multiple accounts. You can't play in more you can't have a forward in the CHL, and you can't be a goalie in the NHL sort of thing. So people go to VG, and I don't know of any other sites that are really that popular, but yeah, so they're playing other leagues. But the one thing that bugs me the most is just don't schedule your games on the same night. In advance when you have games, and it's insane to me that I'll hear people say, yeah, I get LG at 10, I get VG at 10:30, LG at 11, and VG at 11:30 or something like that. I'm like, dude, how do you expect, you're not helping out anybody in that situation, because if one game goes long, you're screwing over a team in another league. Well, and that could throw off. It could just it's just a mess. I mean, I signed up for VG. I never signed up to play in the league or anything like that. I just didn't care to. But to me, it doesn't seem that hard. Just pick 3 days a week where you play in one league, and 3 days a week where you play in the other league.
Yeah, if you're going to sign up for multiple leagues, then make sure you have the time.
Yeah.
Make sure you have 9 of 9 availability if you're going to be playing in other leags. I agree 100%. Don't be scheduling games on the same day. That's not fair to either team. That's not fair to your LG owner, and that's not fair to your VG GM. So, it's also, if you don't have the time, don't sign up.
It's also a lot of times one guy that's late causing 11 other people who were there on time, ready to go, to maybe have to change their plans because the game's going to go later than it was supposed to. And then, of course, the ECU situation where, if you have an ECU but you're waiting on a different guy who's in a different league and you can't get it going, and then that guy misses an AHL game, which obviously you're not supposed to. I mean, if the AHL GM gives you permission, you can use the guy, no problem. But if he says no and the guy's scheduled, you can't overrule that. And if you do use that guy and he misses the game, then that brings up a whole nother situation. So I would just say, the only thing that I want to bring up here is just to caution people about time and how 10 minutes click off the clock much quicker when you're in a game than you think it does. And you say, I'll be there in 2 minutes, we're almost done. And 15 minutes later, the game's finished up. For whatever reason, you get 10 whistles in the matter of 30 seconds. And and then it goes to overtime.
7 lag-outs.
So let's just try and be a little more diligent with our time so that everybody can get these games done and play a little bit more relaxed instead of stressing out on whether or not they're going to have to forfeit because the guy won't make it or try and find an ECU. But anyway, done with that. I wasn't here last week, so I couldn't promote it. But we do have an official LG Hockey Hotline Twitter account. It's at LG Hockey Hotline. Please give that a follow. Now that I'm not as busy with a couple of things that were going on in the last week or so, I will be keeping that up to date, putting announcements throughout the week if I find out we're going to have a guest on the show. If we're going to do any special shows or broadcasts or anything like that, I will tweet it out. So if you could follow LG Hockey Hotline on Twitter, and you'll get updates quicker that way. Hey man, fuck you. Uh, and one last thing I wanted to bring up to talk about is Can-Am. We're going to have next week, we're going to have Prime Time and another guest or two with him on to talk about the Can-Am tournament and what's going on with that, try and get the full information for that out from the mouth of the horses who are running it, and get that out there so you guys can be clear on what it's going to be and how that's going to take place, and kind of ask questions about what this thing's about. So we're going to bring Prime Time and one or two other guys on next week and talk about that. So yeah. And moving on here, let's get back to this playoff race, because it is extremely interesting to me to see. We talked to Colt Crazy on the Deadline show a few weeks ago about that Eastern Conference race and where they were sitting. And, when I look at it right now, the Devils have moved into the third spot in their division with 89 points and look to be well inside the playoffs. And like you said, they're the only battle here is for seeding. Of course, the Islanders and Senators are only 2 points apart. That'll make a difference which matchup they get in the playoffs, whether one of those two teams flip-flops. And then also the Devils, it looks like they've clinched that third spot or come very close to it. I guess they're 6 points up here. But the Lightning and Hurricanes, they're 7 points apart. And the Hurricanes haven't been a team that we've talked about very much. They're just one game under 500 with 11 OT losses, but they've been, those 11 OT losses have given them points. And like we said a couple weeks ago, if 3 or 4 of those games are wins instead of OT losses, and you add 4 or 5 more points, they're sitting right there next to the Lightning for that eighth spot. And I'm interested to see how that'll unfold, because some teams, are favorites, but you could have a team like the Hurricanes who have been fighting all season who sneak in and then get hot at the right time.
And that's all you hope for as a team. If you're not having a great year, you hope you tell your team, if you're a GM, you're an owner, you're like, guys, we just got to put our heads down and get through this week, try to get the playoffs. We get in that 8th seed. Anything could happen from there on out. Anybody can beat anybody in the playoffs. And I think that's kind of the mantra you want to have your team, running through your team, because it's again, you might not be good at the beginning of the day. You might not be good before or after the trade deadline with new lines, new players on your team. But if you can just keep yourself relevant and give yourself that chance, that's half the battle right there, is just giving yourself a chance. Whether it's a 2-point difference or a 12-point difference, give yourself the chance going into that final week and see what you can make happen.
Carolina is definitely one of those teams, like we had said, like you just said, that they're silently making their way. They're slowly getting going here, and they've quietly seemed to climb, and Tampa has kind of faltered a little bit here. Tampa's found themselves right down in that last wild card spot. 4
losses in a row.
Yeah, and Carolina has 3 wins in a row. So, right there is what, an 8-point swing almost. And, so they've gained ground on them like crazy. And now they're not in the same division, but that doesn't matter in the NHL. It's the 7th and 8th spots in the playoffs. It's the 2 wild cards, and they can come from anywhere. Mm-hmm. They can both come from one division, but, Tampa's kind of been on a skid here recently. Losing games in week 8. They only had 3 wins, and in week 7 they only had 4 wins, and in week 6 they only had 2 wins. So but week 5 they went 9-1. So week 5 was the high point and the high water mark for this team, and they
started week 1 9-0.
just kind of been there, and a lot of teams have done this. I mean, we're one of them in Western Conference. We've kind of been struggling a little bit here, and it's that mid-season. Well, I guess it's the end of the season lull that a lot of teams do go through, and now it's time to really dig in and solidify your spot here, and punch your ticket to the playoffs. And Carolina's one of those teams that's they can smell blood. They're playing good hockey. They're beating good teams, and here they come.
Well, it'd be really easy for a team like Vancouver, Arizona, St. Louis, Winnipeg, Tampa, the Islanders to fall asleep at the wheel for a couple nights and find themselves sitting on the outside looking in this week, especially with them being division games. So this week is extremely important. And honestly, I can't even sit here and talk too much about playoff matchups because there's a lot of shaking up still to be done here between most of the teams other than the top one or two in each division.
Yeah, and just looking at the standings, I mean, like you mentioned, is really, trying to go 1 through 8 and seeing, I mean, the only one you can really get a decent idea of the Eastern Conference, in the sense that there's really only 3 teams that have a chance to be the number 1 seed, I'd say, realistically going into this week, and that's Pittsburgh, Columbus, and Boston. The 8th seed race, as hot as Carolina may have been, and the big thing I think about Carolina, going back to them real quick, those 11 overtime losses, they're keeping games close. There. So, if they're just able, if they're just able to get a couple of those more to go their way, they're more in this race against Tampa Bay. But realistically, it's going to be tough for them to get 7 points on Tampa because we know Tampa's a good team.
Absolutely.
And you're all playing pretty much the same opponents. So you got to beat the teams that you can beat. Tampa Bay, they have 4 teams in their division they should easily take down this week if they want to make a playoff run. Carolina's got 3 teams that they're ahead of. So you got your fair share on each side of games that you should win, and that is just a toss-up when you have to face those heavy hitters in your division, and that's really where you see how good of a team you have.
For sure. It's going to take a miracle. It's going to take basically a running of the table and help. So, I mean, it can be done. I don't say it's likely, but it can be done, and, we'll just kind of hang out and wait and see what happens with that race.
Yeah, if Tampa can win 7 of their 10 games this week, then they've done their job, and there's no need to worry. Doesn't matter what any other team does. If they win 7, they've clinched their playoff spot, and you'll see that with a lot of teams. It's this week is knowing, not what you need other teams to do, especially if you're sitting currently in a playoff position. It's taking care of business yourself, and if you take care of business and take it one period at a time, one game at a time, and win the games that you need to win, especially against the teams that, like for us, for example, we've got big games against the Canucks and Oilers this week, who were 2 and 4 points behind. Those are games that we know we can control the outcome and what they do, but the rest of the games this week, we can't control what the Oilers and Canucks do, or the Jets, the Wild, the Predators, the Avalanche, any of those teams. It's going to be on us to just take care of business, and that's the least stressful way to make the playoffs for each team that's right there on the edge.
And not to mention, this is a huge week for ownership. You have to figure out what lines you want to play against what teams. Mm-hmm. And a lot, especially this week out of more, do you want to put what do you consider your bottom line against one of the bottom teams in the league? Or do you think that may prove a disadvantage because those teams at the bottom are still fighting they still want to win games to finish out the season? So do you want to, play one of your top lines against the worst team to guarantee a win? Or do you want to save your top lines for the best team's top line? How do you want to structure your schedule this week? Because it's really tough to figure out, because you don't want to overestimate teams. You don't want to underestimate teams. You really want to figure out that perfect balance. And the owners, the GMs, the guys who can put together those lineups that prove they can run, 7-3 this week, 8-2, 9-1, whatever it may be. Those are the guys that will have the success and get into the playoffs, and deservedly so. But these battles are going to be huge, not only on the ice, but with management trying to come up with their lineups.
Right. And a perfect example of that is a team like yours, Goose, Washington, who, they're sitting at the bottom of, you're sitting at the bottom of your division, but have been for the last 2 or 3 weeks extremely tough to play against in most of the games.
Most.
And, right. I mean, there's always games that just, but, another example of that, people would look at the schedule and see the San Jose Sharks sitting there and go, oh, that's an easy win. And I can tell you, that team has been fighting and has been very difficult to play against over the last several weeks. Most people would look at it and say that they're not a great team by any stretch, but they've played a lot of tight games. And, I watched a game with them last week. I was trying to click on our game and accidentally clicked on theirs, and I watched it for several minutes, and they get the puck and they literally just fire it at the net from all places and have guys crashing to bang in rebounds, and once they get that on a roll, it's extremely tough to climb back uphill the other way.
For sure. And I did just get a little tidbit of information here. Everybody has 10 games this week. We all know that, but Tampa actually has 11 games coming up this week.
Oh, wow.
As they have a rescheduled game with Minnesota from last week. So, they definitely, so they're up, 7 or 8 points with a game in hand. They're up seven points with a game in hand with a rescheduled game coming up here this week as well.
And Minnesota sitting in that 9th position in the Western Conference race, 3 points out of a playoff spot, can get back to an even 10 games left in the season and only be 1 point out as opposed to 3 points out.
And not to mention too, and it could be a bit of a stretch depending on how you view the roster, but with a new owner coming into Detroit, can Stoner make a difference in that locker room to help that team, put together a couple wins this week? Now, obviously, they've been forfeiting a number of games and whatnot, and they haven't really
34 straight losses.
Yeah, they haven't been a franchise to admire in LG, I guess you could say, to put it lightly, but. If he's able to get them to play, if he's able to get them to be any bit motivated, who knows? Maybe a lot of teams in the East Atlantic are looking at that at that game as a free win. Now it might not be. Now it might be something you actually have to work for. Now you might have to question, okay, do I put out my bottom line here, or do I figure something else out, because it might not be as easy as you think. With a change in ownership. I mean, it could be another set of forfeits or whatever it may be, but I'd like to think they're going to compete here in the last week of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And for a guy like Stoner taking it over, if he's a guy that is interested in maybe coming back next season with Detroit or still trying to get ownership, of course, I don't know how that's going to shake out. But if he wants to, one of the things that he's going to want to do is prove this final week that he gets his guys to show up and play and break that 34-game losing streak that they have right now. And, they're the best thing that they could hope for this week is to hurt one of those teams like Tampa, who's in their division, cost them a very big loss and keep them from making the playoffs. That's got to be the goal for a team like that sitting at the bottom of the division right now. There's always something to play for. It's just a matter of if he can convince those guys that this could be a week where they play spoiler and really change how this division shakes out.
Without a doubt. It's going to be a stressful week, I can tell you that much, with as much as, ECUs and shit that we've been having lately. Like, this week's going to be a nightmare. I'm not looking forward to it, to be honest. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not. It's going to be a stressful week. It's do or die time for a lot of teams, and it's week 9. Here we go. We got 10 games this week, and at the end of the week, the dust will settle and the teams will be finalized for the playoffs. And we'll get the playoffs rolling here very soon. And it's going to be a great race this week, seeing who who can pull it off, and who can hold their spots and who can snatch a spot away from somebody. So it's going to be a very interesting week as far as the standings go.
For sure. Well, we can get back into the standings here in a little bit, but let's go ahead and move on here into our weekly power rankings and talk a little bit about the guys that are helping these teams try and make this final playoff push. So this week on the weekly power rankings, we'll go ahead and start off with goalies here, and we've got a different list. I don't see Schneider sitting up here at the top of this goalie list this week, which is
It's a shocker.
Yeah, it's kind of odd actually. But we do have some guys on here who had outstanding weeks, and we've got here in 10th, Craig D85 from the LA Kings went 3-0-1 with a 2.26 goals against average. What's kind of impressive is that Craig D85 and Bielski from New Jersey are the only two goalies on this list that didn't have a shutout this week. So a lot of goalies with shutouts and a couple guys with multiples. In ninth, you have Mooner 2014. He went 5-1 for the Avalanche this week, stopping 68 shots with a 3.01 goals against, 79.1 save percentage, and 1 shutout. Sparkplug Nick for the Pittsburgh Penguins had a pretty good week with a 3-0 record, 2.0 goals against, and an 85.4 save percentage. He also had a shutout. And a guy we haven't seen on this list very much this season, but Goose is familiar with him from last season, Rask. He played 3 games with Minnesota this week and went 3-0 with 25 saves, a 1.95 goals against, 80.6 save percentage, and he did have 1 shutout. So good on him for getting himself onto this list with Minnesota, who, like we said, are fighting for a playoff spot and will need good goaltending in big division matchups this week. Belaya for the Edmonton Oilers went 4-0, 1.47 goals against, 81.8 save percentage, and a shutout. And a guy who's definitely been getting better as the season has gone along, Crosby 87 for the Vancouver Canucks. He went 4-1-1 this week, with a 1.5 goals against, 86.6 save percentage, and 1 shutout. Outstanding week for him. And then for the Chicago Blackhawks, part of that 11-game win streak, they've had Viper 2106 in net, and he went 6-0 this week with 48 saves, 2.0 goals against, 80 save percentage, and one shutout. The league's third star is Bielski, who went 6-0 with 71 saves, a 1.89 goals against, 85.5 save percentage, and no shutouts. League's second star this week was Sam from the St. Louis Blues. He went 4-0-1, 58 saves, 1.48 goals against, 87.9 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. And the league's number 1 star was Big Deezy 416. He went 3-0 with a .67 goals against average, and 93.5 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. Outstanding week by these guys. My number 1 star this week is going to go to Bielski, who went 6-0 this week. He didn't have a shutout, but he had 71 saves, a 1.89 goals against average, and 85.5 save percentage. That week that he had this week for the New Jersey Devils went a long way in helping secure most likely a playoff spot for the New Jersey Devils, who were sitting in the 8th position 2 weeks ago when we had the trade deadline show. They needed a big week, and they got it out of Bielski and Big Deezy this week, Bielski being my star of the week. Goosecheck, what do you got for defense?
Well, time for defense, of course, in the LG Power Rankings. One thing I noticed immediately, no double-digit point getters this week, but that's okay. You're a defenseman. You're not supposed to get double-digit points in 3 games. Sometimes you do, though. Looking at it, everyone on this top 20 did not lose a game. Also good to see. We saw Lizard Man 2-0 with the Canucks, Colt Crazy 3-0 with the Devils, Fu Mancheesy returning 3-0 with the Stars. We had Skinny on the Avalanche, a nice plus 13 in his 3-0 week. Hardick 88 on the Wild 3-0, 4 points to show. We had Offspring Element 3-0 with the Blackhawks, KQ 31 on the Rangers now. She's been around to a couple teams this year. She's 2-0, remaining a very consistent defenseman, 5 points plus 5. Neutrality 11, again, another guy you look at as somebody to lead the defensive core in LG. 3-0 for him, 5 points. Captain Cheese, plus 13 for Ottawa. Serp up there with 5 points, 3 goals for him. Top 10 here, we got Nick, 2-0, 5 points. ZD Ball, 3-0, 4 points on that St. Louis team, pushing for a playoff spot. Big Dog Rex, 3-0 this week, only 1 point per game, but he shows he can play left and right D and win at the LGHL level. Inglis for Dallas, 5 points in a 3-0 game in a 3-0 week, plus 8 for him. Now You're Dead on Anaheim, 3-0, 5 points plus 8, just like Inglis. Top 5 here. Was that Pete Sear? Is that what we're going to go with?
Every week.
Pete Sear. Penguins defenseman, 4 points plus 9 with a 3-0. Matt Hewitt, 87 on Chicago, 3-0, 6 points plus 7. And then the top 3 LG chose. Rich Coy on Boston, 3-0, 8 points plus 6. Deji on Chicago, 3-0, 9 points plus 13, playing left and right. And NH, 3-0, 7 points plus 9 for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But my number one defensive star this week, I didn't get to see who each player played per game, so I can't go off of that. But I will give it to Deji this week, 3-0 with the 9 points, playing both left and right D with a plus 13 for Chicago. Good week for Deji for the Blackhawks.
And yeah, that's a good job by the defenders. And you know, are we following that almost that same trend that we saw last week? You know, it seems like I mean, I remember
cycling between themselves and not involving the defense. I'm just kidding.
No. I mean, you weren't here. We were talking about how the defensive scoring was down last week, and you know, it's just, you know, I don't know. I guess maybe we're just noticing it, or has it been like that all year? Or, you know, our theory was that, you know, it being coming down to crunch time is that guys are locking it down more defensively and you know, playing a more defensive game and maybe not jumping up in the rush quite as much as they were in the beginning of the season.
You know, I noticed over the last couple of weeks that I've been getting a ton when Washington does score. I've been getting a ton of third assists. So maybe that's happened to a lot of these guys. You know, you get the puck in the zone and there's just that extra cycle, that extra cross crease pass, something like that, and you don't get the credit for the point. Or the two other options, either scoring is down for defensemen or we just haven't noticed it, but it's been like this the whole year. But I do think scoring is down a bit for defensemen. You're seeing more plus minuses more than points for the defensemen in the LGHL. How will we get that right?
Now we're going to move on to the point getters. The goal scorers, the people who put points on the board for their teams. A lot of new faces. Some good friends on the list. It's good to see them up here. There are some guys who are just there every week as well. You know, you got Matseb for Carolina, who went 2-0 this week. My boy Matson making it on the list for Boston, going 3-0 this week, picking up 12 points with 7 goals, 5 assists, plus 6 on the week.
Playing for his hometown heroes.
Yep, playing for his hometown team. Pelly made the list for Nashville. Ghost made the list for Boston. Primetime for St. Louis. Another great friend, super good guy. It's good to see him on this list. That's Smitheroo 52 for the Colorado Avalanche. Went 3-0 this week. Super underrated player, even better teammate. You know, he picked up eight points, 7 of them being goals. all from that left wing spot. Looks like he's kind of found himself a home on the left side of the ice here this season, and he's been doing a great job over there. Clark Skog for Anaheim's up on this list, along with Pacioretty, 67. Killers QC, Halaknis from St. Louis as well. Jay Tryhard from Carolina. There's a couple guys from Carolina on the list here this week. X31 from St. Louis. Leticus. I don't fucking know, man. Letex from LA went 2-0-1 on the week with 17 points, which is an outstanding job, picking up 10 goals and 7 assists. That's a pretty good job making 8th on the list with an overtime loss, so you don't see that very often. Prince of Zeus for Chicago is up there. Killhouse, who I believe only plays like 2 games a week for the Rangers, but he had 2 pretty good games this week. Cummins is on the list. Of course, he's on this list almost every week. Perfect Skills QC for Pittsburgh. And then you got Title D506 for Chicago up there. Sudsy for Minnesota. And, I'm definitely going to go with LG's selection this week, I guess. You got TCX7 who just ripped it up this week for Ottawa. Had a huge game against
the Stars.
I believe it was Dallas. Yeah,
yep.
Just
like
ripped
13
it up.
points or something.
I think like 12 assists and a goal or something like that. I'd have to go look at that, but that's a great job by him. Ottawa continues to be right there in the mix in the Eastern Conference, and if TCX keeps putting games like that together, then they're going to really make some noise come playoff time. But that's my first star of the week for forwards. That's TCX 7 from the Ottawa Senators.
And that's our weekly power rankings. It's always nice to see new names pop up there and get to talk about different guys because, we talk about who's on these lists every week, and you get a lot of the same guys because a lot of the really good players are really good all the time. But it's always great to get guys who maybe haven't gotten as much recognition but are good players, maybe underrated, whatever it may be, get their chance to have their moment in the sun. So good job by everybody on the weekly power rankings this week. And this week, week 9 coming up is definitely the week that you want to be on these power rankings, going 3-0 and helping your team win, because this is the week that will do the final deciding of where teams are for the playoffs, if they've made it, if they haven't, and then of course who they're going to play. So well done everybody.
Well, it's looking like we might try and get a guest down here with us for a special segment that we're trying to get, organized a little bit here as we go on. So, we're going to try and bring him on here shortly. Going to get him the link here as we speak, and, we'll kind of get that going.
But as you were mentioning, with the being able to get on that top 20, it helps. It's a morale booster for some players that are on maybe a lesser ranked team, but it also helps going into next season. If somebody recognizes you on that list and you're going into free agency or something like that, that can help you a ton. Or even just someone looking to trade and pick up a forward, pick up a defenseman, a goalie. That's something huge. If you're a weekly occurrence on the top 20 list, or you come out one week, have a great week, put up 20 points as a forward, people might say, hey, if he can do it once, maybe he can do it again. If we put him on a better team, we put him with a better line or something like that. So being on this top 20 can definitely help in a lot of ways, and it's cool to see when it does work out, when someone does have a good week and they're rewarded for it in the future.
Absolutely. I'm looking at these. Let me pull it right back up. I just clicked off of it. I'm looking at the standings and noticing a couple things. I didn't mention the New Jersey Devils, but the New Jersey Devils, let me check real quick, but I'm pretty sure other than Chicago, have the longest current win streak in LG right now. They've won 12 games in a row. It got themselves to 89 points out of that spot. It's very interesting to see teams turn it on at different times, and seems like New Jersey has got hot possibly at the right time. Definitely hot at the right time if you consider trying to lock down a playoff spot. And having both their goalies, of course, going 9-0 this week. 6-0 and 3-0, both of them be two of the league's 3 stars in net this week. Super cool to see that. Just as an example of guys who haven't been. Bielski was on the power rankings the last couple of weeks, but well done by the Devils, winning 12 straight games, putting themselves into third in that division, and currently sitting in a division spot as opposed to, sitting in that 8th wild card spot like they were. It's really probably one of the biggest movements in the standings over the last few weeks. Like Colorado dropped down to the last place spot in their division, but the West Central is still extremely tight, and being in the bottom spot of that division isn't that far out. And those teams could be jumbling up here this week. I'm not going to be surprised at all to see those 4 or 5 teams in the West Central, the Blues, Jets, Wild, Predators, and Avalanche, mix things up every single day this week and see that kind of get jumbled up as they play games, especially against each other.
Absolutely. One thing I do want to go back and touch on real quick is, I'm jumping completely back to the beginning of the show here for a house cleaning thing. One thing that I just
follow us on Twitter, LG Hockey Hotline.
One thing that I just want to put out there, we had a guy just basically go missing on us this week, which is pretty shitty, I think, to do to your owner. Man, if you can't, to your entire team, right? If you can't make it, or if you've lost interest in the league or something like that, and this happens every single year. I remember Washington saying they had a couple guys go MIA last year and just completely stop, talking everything. But all I want to say on that is if you're thinking about quitting the league, let your teammates know, let your owner know,
let somebody know.
Let somebody know so they're not worried about you. Like literally, I was worried about this guy thinking that maybe something really bad happened, like bad enough to where I was checking obituaries and stuff in the city of Calgary looking for this guy, hoping to God that nothing shitty happened to him. So, I build a friendship with players that are on our team, and I would hope that other owners do as well, and I would hope that you just have a little bit of respect for your owners and your teammates especially to, just give somebody a heads up, man. Just let them know.
If you
That's all I want to say.
If you don't want to be here,
okay,
I can't make you want to be here. Just
right.
Tell somebody. That's all.
And I think too, a lot of people, people will find that way out by just leaving and cutting off all communication. Maybe because they're worried about what the team might think of them, what the owner might think of them, what the community might think of them, that they're quitting mid-season or something like that. But think of it this way: you get out of the league and you tell everybody, "Hey, I'm just not interested. Don't feel like playing. Whatever." People can say what they want, but it's not real life. You can just not go to LeagueGaming.com. You don't have to worry about it.
So
it's just so much easier to just tell somebody.
Our special guests.
Yep, and our new weekly guest spot here. Seems like we're probably going to try and make this a regular thing. What's going on, Downey? How you doing, man? I didn't get to talk to you this week.
Just been chilling, been playing some club with Lemonade Stand, my new club. We got done in about a few days, and we've just been grinding ever since.
We got you guys last night like 4 times. It was almost like there weren't any other. It wasn't even. It was like there was no other clubs on.
Yeah.
So how's it going this week?
I believe I'm just predicting. I have a vision in my head that Dallas is going to meet Chicago somewhere along the lines. Dallas is going to win in overtime. Dallas is going to go on to face Florida. Dubs is going to Dubs is going to clinch a Game 6 winning, pushing the Game 7 goal, and Voltep scores final goal, 5-hole against Zach Diesel to win the cup.
Ooh, that's
Pretty
a
bold
prediction
prediction.
there. That's
Yeah.
a bold prediction.
Pretty bold, but I believe that's going to happen.
I'm going to take
now
notes
have
real
that.
quick.
We have it
I
on
trust them.
video and audio.
Yeah,
so there we go.
I'll put some bets in
We'll have to cut that out and add it on in the last segment after the Stanley Cup Finals, if that comes to fruition, and just throw a massive party for it.
So what do we want to call this segment then? Do we want to bring him on?
Downy time, baby.
Downey's
Downy
prediction. Predictions with Downey, and get some sort of storytelling type music to play when he comes on.
Also, I have a question. Is the third spot in the draft, is it still up for grabs?
The third spot in the
What do you
draft.
mean?
What do you mean?
Like number 3 overall pick. Like does the set team have it yet or no?
Oh no, there's a lottery.
It's a lottery.
Yeah, it's a lottery.
Oh, okay.
So the lowest place finishing team in the league this season isn't guaranteed to get the number 1 overall pick.
Okay, all right.
But they have the best chances to win the lottery.
Yeah, I think they only do a 3-team lottery, if I remember correctly.
Well,
it's just 3 teams.
every team that doesn't make the playoffs is part of the lottery, but they do the lottery for the top 3 picks.
Oh, that's right.
And then after that, everybody will just move down one, 2, or 3 spots depending on how many teams jump up into those top 3.
That's right.
So, anyway, how'd your week go this week, Downey? Are you still enjoying the season? I know it's gone by fast.
No, not really. I got shelled 10-2. Yeah, it was pretty bad against Dallas. They just destroyed us. I was going up against
They do that
Busy.
to everybody.
They've done that. They've done that to a lot of teams.
Yeah. Dallas has been a powerhouse, and I think that they have the strength to beat Chicago. Because Chicago's third line is going to kill it. It's just going to end it for them there.
Yeah, that should be an interesting – if they end up playing each other, that would be definitely one to keep an eye on because, I mean, they're so familiar with each other. It would really come down to basically the line matchups, and that's where the home ice is going to come in really handy there. To be able to set your line and know who you're going against as the home team, to be able to choose basically whoever you want to go against whoever the away team has.
Yeah.
So what's are you part of the Can-Am stuff? Are you
teams are not decided yet. I don't think the teams will be decided until for about another week.
Gotcha. So they're actually.
I just have the emblem next to my name to represent the U.S. hockey because U.S. is gonna win. Canada's gonna forfeit all their games.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's great.
Yeah, that ought to be fun to watch. And like I said earlier, we're gonna get prime time and 1 or 2 other special guests. I don't want to say a name yet because there's a couple guys we're working on. We're going to try and get those guys on to talk about Can-Am next week. And that'll give the rosters could be set by next Saturday. We'll see what happens. Maybe they can come on and announce their rosters if they want to do it that way, or just come on and give general information about what it's all about. So I'm interested in it. I can't wait to see how that's going to play out, but I agree, USA.
Well, the U.S., we have stronger goaltending for sure. I'd say Canada has the better defense, and forwards is kind of a toss-up. We'll see how it happens. I'm leaning towards Canada on forwards, but you never know. Anything can happen in 20. How many games would there be? 28?
Yeah. I can't remember, but it's kind of an interesting format, if you ask me.
There's 5 lines.
5 lines, yeah.
So there's 5-man units?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And it's 2 games a night, right? And those 2 games together count as the final score, I think.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. So you could literally, win a game 7-1 and then
lose 8-0 and lose.
Yeah,
9-7.
That's kind of bizarre. But
Basically, it sounds to me like it's going to be a soccer format.
yeah, that's what I'm
With
getting
the
at.
home and away goal aggregate being the final tally to see who wins. So the only thing that I guess you can't make sure who is home and away. And the way we do the games now, found out that it definitely doesn't matter who's searching first, who gets home or away. So I don't know if home and away is going to matter, or if it's just literally the games between the two lines. But very interesting idea. I hope this gets pulled off. I know some people have said it'll fall apart, but it seems like there's a lot of steam building up behind it, and more people are getting interested. So really interested to see how this plays out and what the final roster will look like for each team. And, will all the people that sign up be able to make the games that they, committed to play? Because that'll be another thing. I don't know if you've got 5 lines and each player has to play a certain number of games. I don't know how ECUing would work.
Yeah,
Doesn't sound like there's going to be a training camp or anything.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just a substitution. But
I
mean,
think
actually,
each
give me
team
a
will have
second.
like a set of reserves, maybe 5 reserves, 3 reserves.
yeah, totally. Yeah, the reserves will actually be the ECUs that you use.
Like
But we'll get
24
clarity on all that next week. Hopefully we can get Prime on here, and maybe we can get another guy on here who's a big part of it as well. So we'll do our best to get those guys on.
If you give me just a
here.
second, I do have some info on it. Give me 1 second to pull it up.
All right.
So Donnie, did you say that you were you're just on a 1-season deal, right? Or is it a 2-season?
Yeah, I'm on a 1-season deal. I'm still not too sure yet if I'll take management next season. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely. Yep, we got you.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll take management next season or go back into bidding. It's kind of leaning towards management because, like, if you have a high contract, just you can't really go anywhere. Kind of stuck to
handcuffs you and your team. Really, I mean, it sucks. I don't know. The high contracts it's crazy to me sometimes when you see some of these deals. It's like, my God,
like
how do
Jake
they
Claus,
afford the rest of the team?
Jake Claus is completely trash.
Yeah, he's not worth that. Shit, $10 million. Kidding.
Okay, so so it's basically you must be an active. Whoops.
You have to have played either Pro Series or this
season, or just one of them to be able to play. That's why Nuge can't play.
Correct.
Right. So you must be an active PlayStation player to participate. You must have played games in Season 2 of Pro Series or be a participant in Season 3 of LG ACHL PSN before the date of this post. There will be 0 roster ads for players who do not meet the above criteria. This tournament is to feature players who are actively participating on NHL 17 on PlayStation. Team pages for information on USA and Canada have been announced by Frost and Rahanic for each team. Tournament will start Thursday, January 12th at 11 p.m. Eastern. Each country will have their reserve line play for home ice advantage on this date. The game will be 6 periods long with a host swap for the second game. Winner of the previous year's tournament chooses which half of the game to host. Whichever country wins the 6 periods on aggregate goals will win home ice advantage for the respective country. This game does not count towards the best of 25. Best of 25 starts January 15th. First team to win 13 wins the tournament. So,
and we'll get on all that next week and more in detail, and we'll get to talking about that. But
well, I just wanted to lay that out. That's basically it. That's the rules. It's very straightforward, very simple, just as Frost said in this post. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how it goes. And
sounds like you're getting some messages there. It looks like you're being you're beckoned in the shout box as well there, Donnie. By Chiz, good old Chiz Nasty.
Good old Chiz. Chiz always wants a club.
Yeah, but well, I think that's basically going to wrap it up for us this week, everyone. We'll try and get a regular segment going here for Downey time. See if we can get some good content to talk about, and get a little bit of a roast going for Downey here on a weekly basis. And we'll try and get that going. But Goose had to check out on us earlier. He wasn't feeling too well tonight, so that's basically going to do it for us. In week.
Hold on, let me just give my last shout outs. Hold on, real quick.
Yep, go
All
for
right.
it, man.
I want to give one shout out to the future Norris winner. It's going to be Fu Mancheesy. Props to you. You had a good season. I want to give a shout out to a good defenseman in Braden. Upcoming right winger Riz. He's going to put up mad points in Can-Am. We already know Rahanik's the GOAT at left wing. Don't sleep on him. And Lemonade Stand, we're about to be the #1 club, so come at us. We're about a club right now, so come at us.
Yep. And for me, I'll see you guys next week, and like we said, we'll try and get some of these guys on to talk Can-Am, try and get Downey back on to do a show-ending segment, and until then, we will see y'all later. Thank you very much for watching.